We're back with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich in the center seat. Now to foreign policy. Charles.
Mr. Speaker, the IAEA is going to be delivering a report in a couple of days which will show that Iran is clearly on a path to acquiring a nuclear weapon. It could be on the threshold. If you were president today, what would you do about that? Would you threaten or would you carry out a military strike? And if you didn't, and the Israelis were going to, would you give them a green light, a yellow light, or a red light?
Well, let me work backwards. If the Israelis decide as a matter of national survival that they have to eliminate the Iranian nuclear capacity, I would strongly support them automatically.
Green light.
I don't think the United States has the moral right to say to a country whose people have already gone through one Holocaust, 2 nuclear weapons is a Holocaust. And I think to ask them to take that risk is unconscionable. Now, let me go back to the United States, because we are vastly more powerful than Israel. I think this country, and I said this as early as 2001, this country should have as its policy what Reagan, Thatcher, and Pope John Paul II did in the 1980s. We should be for the absolute replacement of the current regime. We should apply real sanctions. In a worst case, we should blockade the flow of gasoline into the country and cripple their economy. We should be actively subsidizing every dissident group in the country and actively helping them with communications gear and other things, and make it quite clear worldwide. We are in favor of the replacement of the regime. Anybody who sustains the regime and engages in active violence and commits human rights should expect to be tried as a criminal. And I would do everything I could to break them down as rapidly as possible, both in North Korea and in Iran. We keep trying to find ways to deal with regimes that are outlaw regimes. And in the Iranian case, they have a leader who overtly calls for the destruction of Israel and overtly calls for the defeat of the United States, and in a country which has consistently fought us since 1979, and we keep pretending that there's some common ground.
But if regime change is over the horizon, and they are on the threshold of acquiring a nuke, would you consider and would you carry out a military strike, given that, as you say, our capacity is infinitely more effective than any Israeli
capacity? In a hypothetical circumstance.
It's not hypothetical. Well, it's going to get real.
It's hypothetical in the sense that you'd have to be in the room, look at the information, and make your best judgment at that moment. There are a lot of different ways of taking out things, starting with covert operations. I would actively favor very aggressive covert operations, but I'd also favor covert operations to take out the only refinery in the country, because you can bring that country to a halt in 30 to 60 days.
Steve.
Mr. Speaker, last week Major General Pete Fuller was dismissed in Afghanistan because of comments he made criticizing Hamid Karzai after Karzai had said that he would side with Pakistan in a war against the United States. Do you think he should have been fired? And if not, why not?
Look, I don't think it's generally a good... I don't know what's going to happen to his career as opposed to being reassigned. But I think it's generally not a good idea for 2-star generals to pick arguments with presidents. I once went to see a great commander, Don Starry, who was a 3-star at the time, and I couldn't see him. I was writing a book, and I was in before I got to Congress. He had been sent back because he had given a speech at a high school in which he had explained that the real likelihood of war was between Russia and China. And the Carter administration thought that 3-star generals in command of corps probably shouldn't be speaking like this. Now, they talked sincerely. He got a 4th star, became the head of the Training and Doctrine Command. I worked with him for years. But I do think it's fair to say that generals ought to be relatively cautious about public speeches and probably shouldn't take on the host country president.
Juan.
Mr. Speaker, whether we like it or not, the voters and the media are very interested in your personal life.
Okay.
And your daughter wrote, I guess back in May, trying to clear up an episode that's become sort of legendary about you and your wife and first wife in a hospital room serving divorce papers. And I'm just wondering if you think, given this kind of personal baggage and this fact that it's so widely discussed, that this is too much baggage that would prevent you from winning in the primaries or in the general election.
Well, the number of non-news people who ask me about it is remarkably small. Anybody who does ask, Jackie Cushman is my daughter. She writes a weekly column. She has a website, and you can go look up Jackie Cushman. She wrote her experience as my daughter, and I think you'll find there that it's thoroughly explained and that particular story is purely and simply false. It's a lie.